Well, hi everybody, meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to the Joe Chaffee Weather Show on this Thursday, September 26th, 2019. Let me right off the bat. Tomorrow is the 27th oh boy. Tomorrow is the 27th of September. And do you know what the 27th of September is? It's Alan Casper's birthday. So for those of you who remember Alan Casper, a big happy birthday to Alan. I will give him his birthday call in the morning. So just wanted to extend greetings that way. And we've got a lot going on. I don't remember, I really can't recall seeing a major snowstorm in the United States, even out in the Northwest at this time of year. There probably has been. It's only in probably in recent years that I've really been paying closer attention because of the live streams in my YouTube show. In the past, it might have happened, and you just kind of say, "Oh, that's interesting," and then just leave it there. But this one is rather unprecedented, I think, and I'm going to use the word historic because that's what the Weather Service is using in their jargon with this system that is going to be affecting the Northern Rockies starting tomorrow with some high winds, and then going into the weekend. We already have winter storm watches and winter storm warnings up for parts of northwestern Montana, and watches in northern Idaho, some other areas in and around western Montana. High wind warnings up as well, and you've got watches up in Washington State in the counties close to the Canadian border. While we have the map up, just want to point out too, we have flash flood watches and flash flood warnings in eastern Arizona, western Arizona, and southeastern California in the desert counties there because of some heavy rains that are impacting that area thanks to an upper low. But this snowstorm is pretty interesting. With that going on, we also have a Category 4 hurricane in Hurricane Lorenzo, and the Hurricane Center is pointing out. And this Lorenzo is about 1,100 miles to the west of the Cabo Verde Islands, so it's about 2,900 miles from the east coast of the United States. And obviously it's not coming here. This is an ocean storm, but in their view, from what they're seeing, and they said they'll have to go back when this is all over and just kind of confirm this, but outside of Hurricane Gabrielle back in I think they mentioned 1989, this may be the second strongest hurricane ever observed in this part of the Atlantic. And Lorenzo may still get a little stronger. The buzzsaw look is on the satellite, which we're going to take a look at. Lorenzo is going to be a catalyst, I think, in changing the pattern around across North America later next week and beyond. It seems pretty clear when I was looking at the overnight model runs and the dayside model runs that that's where we're going with this. Lorenzo is going to wind up going all the way up into the North Atlantic and impacting a non-tropical low that is going to be developing between Newfoundland and Greenland. And that's going to set a whole process underway where it's going to change things around in the United States. It's a grueling process. It's one that's going to take a number of days or maybe even a week or more to play through, but eventually we will get there, and there will be a few things that'll happen ahead of that, and a few things that'll happen behind that we'll have to deal with. So let's get started. Usually I start with WPC, but you know what? I think what we're going to do tonight is we're going to start with Lorenzo and take a look here on the satellite loop. I mean, this thing is just so impressive, not just with regards to the fact that it's a Category 4, the floater image here, that incredibly well-defined eye. It is really starting to get that buzzsaw look here. And they're even, the Hurricane Center even mentions the fact that there probably will be swells impacting the Windward Islands and even down to the northeastern coast of South America from this. It's at 16.5 north, 40.8 west. And this is a place in the Atlantic where you just don't see storms of this magnitude. But because it's so powerful, it's responding to the steering in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and that means it's responding to a trough out in the Atlantic, and it is going to be moving up through that alleyway that is going to be set up, and it may eventually threaten the Azores in a few days when this thing gets rocking and starts moving north of 20 and then eventually north of 30. The estimated minimum central pressure here, 943 millibars, and maximum sustained winds as they're carrying on the advisory of 140 miles an hour. I mean, look at the look how big this is. I don't. This is, I think, about as large in terms of the scope of the clouds from north to south. That's about as large a hurricane as I've ever seen. I mean, it goes well up to about 25 degrees north on the northern end of the cirrus, and down to probably just south of 10 degrees north on the south end. That's about a 900-mile stretch from one end to the other. Of course, obviously, the core is in a much tighter area there in terms of mileage coverage, but just in terms of the scope of the circulation and how big it is. And also you're seeing, by the way, the upper air flow. If you look up to the north of the hurricane and northwest of the hurricane, you've got clouds that are moving northwest to southeast, and then they kind of turn and go southwest to northeast. So that's the upper trough that this thing is responding to. It's right, you've got these clouds moving like this. So right in here, you've got this weakness. I don't know why it does that. Oh, good Lord, come on. My audience does not want this to happen. I'll close it. Let's reopen it. Okay, no issues so far. But there's your trough. And Lorenzo is already turning northwest. It's going to turn north and then north-northeast. So it's headed right in that direction. And the Azores, by the way, are right up here. So that I think it's going to probably make a relatively close pass to. We'll have to see ultimately, does it make it there or does it go to the west of the Azores? Now, take a look at Karen, which is right here. This elongated east-west mess of thunderstorms, and it is. This is going to go away. I really think this is going to wind up just getting ripped apart when it gets involved with the stronger upper-level winds in the atmosphere that are going to be to the west. We have an upper low here in the Bahamas, and you can see the rotation of the clouds. So right now, the thing about Karen is that it actually had a long period of time where conditions were favorable for strengthening, but it just wasn't able to do it. So obviously there were other things going on that prevented this system from organizing. And once it stops moving northeastward, which is what it's doing, and it's responding here, by the way, you've got this remnant low of Jerry, still pretty obvious, hasn't gone away yet, and that is, at the moment, pulling Karen up to the northeast. But this upper low, the remnant low of Jerry, will fall apart, and at that point, you're going to wind up seeing Karen starting to move more west or even west-southwest. But you know what? It's going to be coming into an area of increasing shear in the upper atmosphere, and that's going to put an end to it. So we're going to see this get downgraded eventually to a depression and then to an open wave. The funny thing about this is that the global models for days have been doing this, but a lot of the statistical models that the Hurricane Center looks at was strengthening it, and the global models won out. The European, the GFS, the ICON model, they all pretty much went on this idea that Karen was going to go away. There are a couple of other waves back in Africa and coming off the African coast that might might have a shot for developing down the road. Not the lead wave so much, but some of the ones that are still inland. But you got to get Lorenzo out of the way. So once Lorenzo gets up to about 30 degrees north, that issue will be resolved. So we'll come back again to the tropics maybe a little bit later. Let's jump to the west coast, where we have this winter storm, and this is the first day I'm using pulling up the Weather Service's snowfall forecast map, and I have it centered in over Montana and northern Idaho, and it cuts off at the Canadian border. So obviously there's snow going up on the other side. But look at some of these amounts that are being forecasted, up to 4.5 feet of snow. I don't know where that 55 point actually is in Montana, but it sure is. There is a dot for it, but I just don't know what town that's supposed to represent, nor do I know where the 31 is. But that yellow is all 36 inch, roughly 36 inches plus. So you're talking about at least 3 feet of snow in the mountains, in the Rockies, in the Northern Rockies. And they're not specifying elevation very much here. So this is going to also extend down even into the lower levels. And look at this forecast. This was I got this from the Weather Service office. This, I believe, is from Missoula, Montana. And that's what they have on their page. Historic winter storm this weekend with these humongous amounts being forecasted. Now, for the bigger cities, for example, Helena is 6 to 8 inches. Butte, Montana, forecasting 8 to 12. So at least those are cities that you certainly should be able to recognize. This all happens, by the way, on the Idaho side, north of Boise. So Boise's not really in this. There's a town there on the bottom called McGall, I think it is, if my glasses are reading this correctly. 1 to 2 inches there. You see some of these other towns that are printed out, really not showing very much. But then you start heading northward. There's Happy's in Idaho, 4 to 6 inches. Libby, Idaho, 1 to 2 inches. Yak, Idaho, 4 to 6. But then you go on the Montana side, and they just get absolutely clobbered. And here's the other Weather Service office. Now this is from, I don't know what TFX is. That might be from Great Falls. So this may be from Great Falls, Montana, the Weather Service office there. Great Falls, 8 to 12. Augusta, Montana, 18 to 24. Marias Pass, 36 to 50. St. Mary's, 36 to 50 inches. Cutbank, 24 to 30. That's insane. They usually, the snowstorms that they get up here, all right, every once in a while they get clobbered, and I understand that, but you don't often see double-digit numbers like this, even up in the Northern Rockies. The winters there are long, and yes, they do start early, but boy, those are just really, really impressive. And as I said, the Weather Service is calling it an historic event for that particular part of the Northern Rockies, and since they know their geography a whole lot better than I know than I do, I will respect that, and we'll take a look at that on the GFS. In fact, we'll do that first since we're still talking about that. We can always come back to the tropics, and we'll talk about Lorenzo and why, what it's going to be doing, its impact on the overall pattern across North America. Right now, you have strong westerly winds in the upper atmosphere blowing right across the United States. The southern part of those westerlies extend down to about southern Kentucky, southern Virginia. We're going to see the shortwave that is now moving through New England lift out, but you'll notice out in the west you've got this really deep trough and cutoff low that is dropping southward. I mean, this is crazy, but this is a very, very deep upper air low. When you see the darker blues, this gives you the anomaly in terms of the, if we were looking at a surface map, we'd be talking about pressures. So when we're looking at an upper air map, we talk about heights, as how high you go to get a pressure of 500 millibars. So when you're seeing the dark blue, you're talking about below normal pressures at that higher level of the atmosphere. That is that's a very, very powerful upper low that is dropping in and just kind of rotating there. It doesn't even lose much strength. It just rotates around in Oregon and over Idaho and western Montana. And you see here the trough that swings around. I'll take right in here. There's an arm that swings around and rotates and lifts up northward. So right here, this is the axis of the trough coming completely, almost full circle around that upper low. That upper low stalls out over Idaho, over Oregon it's there. This is getting in there early Saturday morning, and it's still there going into Sunday evening before finally you start to lift it out toward the northeast as we get into Monday and Tuesday. Now, while all this is going on with this deep trough in the west, you've got this ridge that's going to be building here in the east. So after we get through this weekend and we get through Monday, and the onshore flow that we're going to have to deal with Sunday, Monday relaxes, we're going to get pretty warm here for a couple of days. And in fact, I wouldn't be at all shocked if we see some temperatures climb up maybe on one of those days, Wednesday or possibly Thursday. I think if it's going to happen, maybe the best day, the chance would be on Wednesday, where we see temperatures well up into the 80s and a few 90-degree readings showing up in a couple of hot spots. We just saw that happen not too many days ago. Well, might happen again here with this ridge in the east. But it eventually gets flattened out because you've got this trough, a new trough coming into the west. The ridge gets flattened out because on the upper right is the western extent of the strong upper low I mentioned earlier that's going to be forming between southern Greenland and Newfoundland, and that is going to be driven by Lorenzo to a certain extent, and that is going to put an end to the warm weather for the middle part of next week with a cold front. I think it comes through here on Thursday, and then we cool off rather significantly in the northeast down into the mid-Atlantic states going into Friday and next weekend. And then another shortwave trough follows with another shot of cooler air. So I think that's where we're going with this in the longer term. After the middle part of next week, we're going to start seeing these shortwave troughs swinging through and bringing down some shots of cool air, and certainly cooler than average as far as temperatures are concerned. We may get into a stretch there where temperatures are going to be running at best seasonal, and at worst somewhat below average. Maybe in some places it might be a bit more significant. But this is a much colder flow that sets up in the long range, and the models have been kind of telegraphing this for a while, and so has a lot, and certainly the action that we're seeing going on across the Pacific and the Atlantic suggest that this is going to be the case. So let's come back to Lorenzo, because we really don't, I'm not really overly worried about Karen here. So let's roll back. And you can see Lorenzo here on the surface map. This is Lorenzo right here. We'll just put an L there. You've got Karen. What's left of Karen is still out there trying to call a manager, and manager's not showing up. And Lorenzo starts its turn to the north. You see that remnant, that low that represents Karen gets pushed to the west or west-southwest and then just disappears. But you watch Lorenzo passing very, very close to the Azores, which are right here. Now, while that's happening, you'll notice there's this big arm that comes around from this low that is sitting between Labrador and Greenland, and there's an occluded front. I'm going to try to draw it a bit better here, but there's an occluded front that extends from there southward down into the Atlantic. So Lorenzo's kind of riding up on the east side of that. This is very cool, very cool air, maritime air, and it's also at certain levels of the atmosphere. There'll probably be some dry air that gets entrained in these systems on the west side. Well, at this point, I think you're still going to see Lorenzo maintaining most of its tropical characteristics. But watch that low. Moves north-northeast, and it's basically rotating around this feature here. So it moves north, then northwest, as a very, very deep low, gets rather close to Iceland, the southwestern part of Iceland, and swings all the way around to the southern tip of Greenland. And there's still an identifiable feature here when we're all said and done. We can follow it again. Up, around, and by the way, right behind it, you've got this low that develops. Okay, that's a non-tropical low. But this whole mechanism is very complex, and you're getting this really very large Atlantic cyclone. That you have cyclones within a cyclone. I think that's a good way to describe it, because here's the extent of the isobar that you can track all the way around it, and you've got two very deep lows, and this one represents Lorenzo, that is touching the southern tip of Greenland. Whether it gets there or not, the important thing is it's revving up this whole upper feature that is going to be there, and it's going to be sitting out there for a while. So that's going to really impact the weather pattern down the road. If you look at this, if we take a look at this from the standpoint of the upper air, let me get rid of my pen. We'll take the upper air of this and look at it that way. Okay, that's the one I want. So I'll roll it back so you can watch the upper low actually form southeast between Newfoundland and Labrador and Greenland. But right here is your upper low. It just suddenly appears there by Sunday night, Monday morning, and then it lifts up. You see where Lorenzo is. That's that wrapped up circle in the middle of the Atlantic. Passes close to the Azores, and now the upper low steers it up and around, and it just energizes that whole feature to the point where there's actually a second shortwave trough next Friday. You see it here, right there. That arm is going to move southeastward and helps to bring that shot of cool air I described, especially up into New England and over Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. We'll probably get into a rather decent shot of chilly air for this time of year. And then as that pulls out, you have yet another trough that replaces it in the eastern part of the United States during the long term, and then that pulls out and another arm drops in. So you could, if we get to this point like this, that's going to really suggest a rather chilly period for the eastern part of the United States that will get underway after about October 3rd or October 4th. So we're talking about after, say, Wednesday or Thursday of next week. I think we're on course for this, and if we still see the model, if we still see this on the models as we get into the weekend, I think we could just probably, at that point, put it in the bank. So we'll bring up the U.S. map tonight, and we'll roll back from the beginning. So I got the whole map from coast to coast. You can see this storm out in the west getting underway Friday night, and then it really just revs up here during the day, late in the day, Saturday night, and Sunday. That looks like when the bulk of this is going to be. Probably during Saturday night into Sunday afternoon. You've got a 993 low in southeastern Wyoming, and a large area of snow being indicated from the mountains of Washington and Oregon, and even kind of bleeding into parts of northern California and northern Nevada. And the main area, of course, is up in western Montana. They're calling, as I said, they're calling it historic. And then, of course, it lifts up and out. We here in the east, we had a cold front move through today, which wound up being a lot busier with showers and even some thunderstorms, and had a few special marine warnings that went out for parts of Long Island and New Jersey. Well, I was kind of caught a little surprised by that. I thought maybe we just have a few showers and that would be it. But during this afternoon, the radars just really went to town in terms of developing the showers. And A lot of folks here got to see rain for the first time. In some places, it hasn't rained in over 2 weeks. So here's our front that moves on through, and goodbye. High pressure weekly builds in tomorrow. Nice day, like it was on Wednesday, from Maine all the way down into Virginia. A little leftover rain there in coastal South Carolina and southeastern North Carolina. And then here comes the next front for Saturday. So we're going to warm up a little bit on Saturday. Some areas will be getting back into the 80s again. The front comes through. And now this next high initially starts all the way up in James Bay. So we're here at Sunday evening at this point. The front itself, the frontal boundary, has probably pushed its way down into at least southern North Carolina or even into South Carolina. So we're talking about an onshore flow here, northeast winds. So we'll start to cool off during Sunday, and it should hold that way until Monday. Meanwhile, this is what's left of Karen, this little remnant low that continues to move to the west, and nothing much with that. The high to the north will take another 2 days to eventually find its way off the mid-Atlantic coast, which it does on Tuesday. So Monday, I think, will still be on the cool side. The flow stays on shore into Monday afternoon before it starts to turn. And then on Tuesday, we begin with a westerly flow that develops, and there are going to be some showers. There's a frontal boundary that's going to be setting up across northern New England, and you see this surface low that's here. You got the cold front that is behind it. We'll draw it in here. Of course, by this time, the snowstorm in the Northern Rockies is long gone, but this is all very warm and humid air that's going to be, and more humid air that's going to be impacting much of the mid-Atlantic states and points south. You get closer to that frontal boundary, you're going to probably have some showers and maybe some storms to deal with. The models were trying to suggest that there might be a little bit of a backdoor here. There's a second wave that we're going to have to wait for that'll bring in the primary push, which is all back through here. I don't know how that happened. I just drew two of the most perfect straight lines I've ever drawn. So here's where all your cool air is on by Wednesday. So we got to watch to see if this front pushes far enough south. Anybody just to the south of that front, that's where you could wind up seeing temperatures perhaps get close to 90. We may have to wait till Thursday afternoon to finally get that front to really push on through. And now you got this big high that is building in with a fair amount of cool air. Again, we've got that shortwave trough that's dropping down from northeastern Canada and swinging around through New England. That's going to bring down a shot of cool air, and that high builds all the way down into the Carolinas. So this is a nice northerly flow of air that's going to cool things off late next week, and I think that's where we'll stay as far as the pattern is concerned, and it becomes a matter of highs moving out, fronts coming through with showers, and then even cooler air that comes in behind it. As long as that northern part of the jet stream aligns itself the way models seem to be indicating, I think we stand a good chance to having some cooler weather and maybe progressively cooler weather as we get into and start getting the month of October rolling right along. All right, back to current weather. Just want to show you, at least from the standpoint of what's happening at the moment on the radar, getting a lot of showers and some embedded thunderstorms, or at least some embedded heavier downpours from Maine. Almost the whole state is covered in Maine in rain, but that was a mistake. The whole state of Maine is covered in rain. Rain through all of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, just pulling out of Vermont, and the back edge here has now actually moved off the coast of Long Island and New Jersey, and we're done. The radar here is a little delayed by about 30 minutes or so. It's 7:32 Eastern time, in case you're wondering. If you're watching this on a replay, obviously it's dated, so go to weather.gov for all the latest as far as what's going on radar-wise. We've got just a little bit of scattered activity showing up in parts of eastern Tennessee and western Virginia. Some rain up through the Dakotas at the moment, and rushing eastward through Montana as they start to set the table for their historic snowstorm Again, that's a word I rarely use. The Weather Service used it. That's what they're describing it. That's what they're saying it. And as I said earlier, they know their area best. So I will respect their call and echo it because they know what they're doing. So here's, by the way, SPC. I was kind of surprised by this, but it was definitely justified in hindsight. They went and put up a marginal risk of severe weather for southern New England and southeastern New England and Long Island in that small little circle you see there, and it actually worked out quite well with what developed late this afternoon. We are still seeing a chance for thunderstorms on up into northwestern New England. It looks like there's a little renegade line that's moved off of Lake Ontario and now moving eastward, and general area of thunderstorms extending south. But as far as severe weather is concerned, that's really the only area that we're seeing. Kind of felt good to use those, to look at those snow maps for the first time. Signs of seasons to come and frustrations to come for snow lovers for sure. Here's WPC's map. And you look up in Montana and you see that there's an actual stripe there of 3 inches plus of liquid. So they're thinking that when you melt it down, those 36-inch plus snow amount forecast for some of those areas seems justified. And we're again seeing a large area of rain. And of course, this is where your frontal boundary is setting up with respect to that ridge in the east. So we're looking at more rain from Kansas on up to the Great Lakes for the next 7 days. Well, maybe more. This is a little more front-end loaded than back-end loaded, but the bottom line is the rainfall amounts are going to be rather excessive in some places. And look where it's dry, pretty much from Texas across the Gulf states through the Mid-Atlantic and on up to about southern New England, with rainfall amounts at about a tenth of an inch or less over the next 7 days. So as far as rain is concerned, it's whatever we get out of showers on Saturday with that weak cold front, and then again maybe next Thursday. I'm just not overwhelmed by either one of those being the potential for significant rain producers. A lot of areas here in the Northeast and down into the northern Mid-Atlantic states are having their driest Septembers on record, or at the very least in the top 10. So that pattern at least is going to last into the last days of the month and taking us into the first days of the month of October. So I think that, oh, you know what? One other thing. Why not? Since we're talking about snow, wherefore art thou, GFS snow map? And I'll bring it up on the screen. I know I haven't opened the window yet, but I'll get it there. Why don't we go really tight and see what they're doing? So we'll go to the western U.S. I will put it up there. Hang on. I just want to roll it all the way back to the beginning. And there you go. So this is what the GFS is doing. You can actually go a little bit tighter. This is, I think, will be better. Okay, so watch that snow come, and there it is. I mean, even this model through 108 hours. That's through 120, so that goes through Tuesday. The amounts are just, for this time of year, this is really crazy. I think even for a month from now, this is pretty excessive. And I'll just bring up the NAM. I'm just kind of curious. Let's see what the other models are doing with this. So let's go with the NAM. Same idea. Okay, same idea. Numbers are different. Each map uses its own algorithms to figure out what the snow amounts are going to be. But I'm just kind of having a little bit of fun here. Here's the Canadian. Same idea here. Somebody's some places getting clobbered. And let's look at we have it, so we might as well look at it. The GFS Legacy. Oh, we don't have a snow map for the GFS Legacy. That is the old GFS before it was replaced by the parallel GFS. I think that was back in June when they made the switch. But even this model goes kind of nuts with snow here over the weekend, and still going on in some places into Monday afternoon. I am, for one, am going to be very curious to see what transpires out of all of this. When you're putting big numbers like that out, especially because it's Thursday and you're talking about the bulk of this coming late Saturday night and Sunday, but they're calling it what they're calling it. And back with everybody on the chat board tonight. Thanks for being here. The chairman, Scott Briller, always the headliner. Anthony Orr is the change in the pattern going to help shut down the Cape Verde type hurricanes. There might be one more. The European actually has something coming off around day 5 and 6. So it handled what was Lorenzo in its longer range pretty good. I think there's room and a little time for one more. We're getting close to the time, though, where that east-west push begins to really weaken. And we're getting close to that. So if we once we get past those first 10 days of October, then I think we could just shut that part of it off. Do I think this current snowfall? No, Ryan Ford. The current snowfall happening in Montana and Idaho will have an effect on our weather going into the winter months. If it's, well, I mean, look, in the mountains they put it down and it doesn't go away. But no, there's no. It's part of that endless search for the magic bullet. As far as if I have A, therefore B must happen, and we just can't really look at it that way. So I really, I don't think it's anything significant in the longer term. It's a short-term phenomena. The atmosphere is set up in a way that is causing this to occur, and I don't think it has any real long-term implications. I don't think it's signaling that the trough is going to be in the west for months at a time. If it winds up being in the west for months at a time, it would have done that regardless of whether that storm would have formed or not. So I just don't think it has any material impact with regards to looking at it from the longer haul. That's my opinion. A long-range guy that looks at this stuff might have a different view of things, but I would probably defer to them because they know far better than I. Rosendo Benitez, welcome. I am more concerned of the drought conditions in your area across the southeast states. Your area in North Carolina hasn't got a decent rainfall since Dorian. With that ridge in the east, it's a very, very difficult thing. The upper high sitting where it is not good with regards to producing any kind of shower or thunderstorm activity. The atmosphere is too stable. So we got to get rid of that upper high, and we have to get you into a pattern where weather systems are moving along and where the Gulf of Mexico is open, and where the moisture in the Gulf of Mexico, when I say it's open, I mean that the Gulf of moisture can ride up into the southeastern part of the U.S., and we have to get the Atlantic Ocean to open up as well. And right now, with the upper high, at least into the middle of next week, that isn't going to be happening. What do these hurricanes have on effect on the oscillations? Well, Tim, you saw on the map before how the presence of Lorenzo getting lifted all the way up into that giant Atlantic storm up there. I mean, that is actually going to probably turn the North Atlantic oscillation positive to a certain degree, if I had to guess. I'll take a look. I brought them up yesterday. I'm not going to bring them up today because I really, they're fun to look at, but they're not overly useful. But indeed, when you look, I'm looking at it now. The impact of Lorenzo is going to be to take the North Atlantic oscillation, which is actually negative right now and is negative until October 3rd or 4th, and it swings it positive going into from the 5th of October on. So it is having an impact there. The interesting thing to me is that changes the two things that are going to happen. You're going to be switching to a ridge in the west about the same time. So Lorenzo is moving up into the North Atlantic, and you're seeing two significant changes that are happening. One is that the North Atlantic Oscillation, or the Greenland Block, what we would refer to as the Greenland Block, will be not only non-existent, will be the opposite of that. It will be a very progressive west to east pattern across in the North Atlantic. In the west, you're seeing a change where the Pacific North America Index, ridge in the west, and in a few other places, ridge in the west actually is off the wall negative right now. So you have this deep trough in the west that's going to be the snowstorm, goes neutral and positive around the same time that Lorenzo goes up into the North Atlantic. And all of this going on with the EPO, the East Pacific Oscillation, staying negative. So I think with those two changes, well, particularly the change of the PNA, but the NAO as well, those two changes combined with that East Pacific Oscillation staying negative is supportive of the idea that we are going to go into a much cooler pattern after we get through the first half of next week. So we just got, for those of you who are looking for some cool fall weather, a little bit of patience. Johnny Quest, thank you so much for hitting Super Chat. Yes, I have 5 days off. It's a staycation, but I do have 5 days of no television, which is good. One of the things I'm doing as my time winds down here at Fios One News is that I'm taking some time off. I normally take time off in the fall to relax and to fish, and it's a time of year where a lot of folks, everybody's in school or everybody's back to work, so it's actually a great time to go to the beach if the weather cooperates. And I always like taking time off in September, October, November. So since I'm not going to be working doing television after November 15th, I thought about it and I said, you know what? I'm going to take the time off and enjoy myself. So I appreciate hitting Super Chat, Johnny. That gets me a cigar for my rest time, but I got to power wash my house. Okay, that's before I even get to rest, I have to power wash my house, and that's on my to-do list for tomorrow. So after I take care of that, I will be doing a little bit of relaxing. Let me just update you on a couple of things. In case you haven't been on for the last few days, if for those of you who've been here every day, it's going to be repetitive, but let me just remind everybody that the app has been updated on Google and on iPhone, on Android and on iPhones. So if you haven't downloaded the updated version, by all means download it. It's absolutely free, and one of the changes that we made is that on the local forecast page, it now will manually go to your default location, so you don't have to enter a location every single time unless you happen to have lived in Islip on Long Island. So now it goes to your local forecast no matter where you are in the United States. The radar I am told on the iPhone, the radar, the zoom radar that is on there, also goes to your location. We are checking to see if we can fix it on the Android. Otherwise, you're just going to have to. You can move it yourself with your fingers, obviously. But it would be nice if you happen to be in a different location to have that radar shot centered where you are. I'm not promising that we'll be able to get it there, but you certainly can move it on your own. But on the Android device, it's just like the iPhone. It will default to your location on the local forecast and current conditions. If you are on Long Island, there's a Long Island tab now that you can, when I occasionally post about Long Island, and I will be posting regularly once I'm done with my 5-day-a-week job. But there's a separate Long Island tab for specifically Long Island posts, along with the New Jersey tab and the home page where I write a lot of my stuff. So make sure you download it. You can also, if you ever miss a live stream or you miss Weather in 5, and you can watch it on the app itself, because I put them in there every day, and it makes life a lot easier to have it all in one place. And it's absolutely free, which is even better. Free stuff is good. For those of you who would like, there are a number of ways that you can support what I'm doing, and believe me when I tell you, I completely and totally appreciate those of you who have hit Super Chat along the way. Thank you very much. I really, really do appreciate it. And if you are really into weather, you can jump on my Patreon platform. I just put the link up there for you. That is just $2 a month, and you get lots of weather every day, including live streams just for tape videos just for Patreon members. It's easier to do those. I have more control over them than doing the live stream. So you do get extra videos for members only, as well as posts that no one else gets to see. So and you can message me at any time, and it's really good if weather is part of your decision making process every day, especially for businesses or for whatever reason, and you need some extra help. There are other tiers available on there for a bit more hand-holding, as I like to call it. So, but for $2 a month, if you're the weather geek, that's perfect. So do consider that. And an easy way that doesn't cost you a dime is if you are an Amazon shopper. And just going to put up my what I call the Jostradamus link on Amazon. You don't have to purchase what's on here if you just use the search bar to get whatever it is you're looking for. We're a participant in the Amazon Services LLC program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and its affiliated sites. So the plan for tomorrow is this: weather in 5 tomorrow morning. The live stream tomorrow night, I'm going to, right now, let's say it's kind of iffy. I'm not sure. But if I do decide to do the live stream, I will schedule it early, and you'll know, so you'll get notifications on it. If you're on Patreon, you'll get your notification as well. I'll see how it is. If it looks like it's going to be relatively quiet and not much has changed through all of this, I may skip it, or may just do a short one where we talk about the snowstorm in the Northern Rockies. The weekend, I'll get something on there over the weekend at some point, and then Monday and Tuesday we'll be certainly back to some sense of normalcy. Although I will not have to be back to work, and I won't be doing it from this spot. I'll be doing it from another spot over the if I do with the live streams over the course of the next 5 days. Okay, have a great evening, rest of your evening, and we'll see you about tomorrow. Okay, and don't forget, tomorrow morning weather at 5. Don't forget to download the updated version of the app. Good night, everybody.